I might have mentioned before that I love to travel, and I might have mentioned that we have kids who have been traveling with us all over Europe and the US since they were quite little. We started going abroad when the younger one was about 6 years old. But what you might not know yet is that my son, that's the younger one, has many food allergies. Yes, we eat out in foreign countries with a very allergic child. So in a few weeks we're going to Barcelona, and this gave me an idea. Why not make a video on eating out with allergies? This video was inspired by my favorite travel channel, Wolters World. If there ever was a channel I wish I could collaborate with, it's that one. But YouTube collabs are kind of hard to arrange, so instead I thought, why don't I just make a video in Mark's style? Mark is the creator of Wolters World, and if you like to travel, you'll love his channel. Links below. Okay, back to allergies. I'm in a somewhat interesting position because I'm on both sides of this, allergy epidemic that the human race is currently going through. I know what it's like on the business side because many of my students have allergies, and I know what it's like on the consumer side because my son has allergies. So today we are going to talk about 5 biggest mistakes people with allergies make when they eat out. First, let's set the scope for this video. Allergies and intolerances vary a lot from I can't eat a lot of this thing, all the way to I can't be in the room if someone else is eating it. If you have allergies that are so severe that the table next to you can make you sick, this is not the video for you. But if you will only get sick if you eat or touch an ingredient, then stick around. The number one mistake people with allergies make is not carrying an Epi-Pen and Benadryl at all times. That's like not wearing a seatbelt and then demanding that everyone should drive very carefully. Of course we want to drive carefully, but in case of an accident, a seatbelt can be that difference between life and death, and so can your Epi-Pen. Although I always have both Epi-Pen and Benadryl, Benadryl is the only thing I've ever had to use. Most minor reactions like itchiness or upset stomach can be relieved with Benadryl, especially if it's taken immediately after the exposure. Using an Epi-Pen if you got somewhat itchy or just threw up is really annoying because you have no idea what the severity of the reaction is, and just in case you need to get yourself to the hospital in 20 minutes and then be kept in that hospital for hours. Totally worth it if you're having trouble breathing, totally not worth it if your mouth is itchy. The second biggest mistake is not communicating the allergies in writing. If you have a piece of paper in your wallet that clearly states what you can and can't eat, you'll avoid many miscommunications between you and the waiter, and then the waiter in the kitchen. I know you can order plastic cards with this info online. I'll link to some sites where you can get them in all different languages. But I prefer lots of little papers that I cut out before each trip. This way, I send them right into the kitchen of any restaurant and don't worry about them losing it or me losing it. I have tons of them. I started carrying my son's allergies in writing when we started going abroad, but once I saw how incredibly useful it was, I thought this piece of paper would come in handy even when we eat out in the US. Otherwise, I'd say things like, "He's allergic to eggs," and the waiter would reply, "Well, all the sandwiches have dairy in them, so he can't have them." Yo, dude, eggs are not dairy. So here is what my son's allergy card looks like. In case you're thinking, well, I'm only allergic to peanuts. Who needs an allergy card for that? Well, it might still come in handy. I find it's just as important to communicate which related products you can eat safely as which ones you can't. If you communicate it verbally, you can always get a mix-up of what's safe and what's not. For example, although my son can't have peanuts and sesame, he can have peanut oil and sesame oil. Although he can't have shrimp, lobster, and crab, he can have scallops, mussels, octopus, squid, and all sorts of fin fish. If you just say that you have a shellfish allergy, it's very confusing what exactly you mean by that. So it's good to be specific and to present it in writing. Besides giving the allergies in writing, I also suggest you notify the restaurant ahead of time, whenever possible. When you make your reservation online, they always give you a notes field. The more notice you can give a restaurant, the better they'll be able to accommodate you. And please, never assume that some allergy is irrelevant. I had a student who didn't tell me about her apricot allergy because she thought it was irrelevant for a fish class. Well, guess what? We were cooking salmon with apricot glaze. In case you're thinking that the more information you give me, the more difficult you make things for me as the cook, it's just the opposite. The more information you give me, the easier you make things for me. And please, don't assume that you can be this super considerate guest who simply won't eat anything. In most social situations, that will be kind of obvious, and everyone will start asking you questions and bending over backwards to make sure you get something to eat. So, in case you were hoping to create less fuss by keeping your allergies top secret, trust me, it never works. The third most common mistake is choosing a bad restaurant. Most people assume that the fancier the restaurant, the more scary it would be for people with allergies. I mean, don't they have all those exotic ingredients and complex preparations? Well, we've never had problems in pricey farm-to-table places. They make everything on site, so they know exactly what's in each dish. Also, the more upscale places take pride in what they do and will go out of their way to create a great customer experience. A suffocating customer is not a happy customer. All the horror stories that have happened to us and other parents we know happened in chain or cheap restaurants. There is a girl in my son's class who is allergic to peanuts. Her parents ordered her a sandwich at a certain popular chain restaurant, asking for no peanut butter. And some distracted teenager working the line at that certain chain restaurant ended up putting peanut butter on it. This story ends with an anaphylactic shock and a call to 911. Don't worry, the girl lived to tell the tale, but her parents now don't trust anyone about peanuts. If there is a peanut in the building somewhere, they can't eat at this restaurant. I have a similar story of my own, except that I'm still pretty chill in restaurants with my kid. My son was once out with my parents at a somewhat inexpensive Japanese restaurant. They got mochi ice cream for dessert, and the waiter told them there were no eggs in it. Well, it turned out the restaurant didn't make this dessert, they bought it. And they threw away the package, so they assumed there were no eggs when there were eggs. When did they choose to communicate all this? Only after our kid was throwing up all over their restaurant and swelling up like crazy. Yes, mistakes happen. 100% safety is impossible, but you can get to 99.9% safety by communicating allergies in writing and choosing restaurants wisely. And for that 0.1% chance, there is an Epi-Pen. The fourth mistake is making assumptions We learned this lesson a very hard way in Lisbon. We liked one of the restaurants enough to return the second time the week we were in Lisbon. So the first time, we went through the whole allergy spiel and everything was fine. The second time, the restaurant told us they know everything about our allergies, we don't need your card, don't worry. Okay, so we were ordering the same exact dishes, so we didn't ask them about each dish as they delivered them to the table. My son took a bite of tuna crudo and within a minute got that panicked look in his eyes and said, "Mom, my throat is itchy." He had this dish last time we were at this restaurant. The toppings looked a bit different, but we thought they'd warn us if they weren't safe, right? I mean, they knew we're a table with allergies. I immediately gave him Benadryl and called our waitress. She said, "Oh, we thought he was having octopus. We didn't think he'd be having tuna. Oh yeah, that topping that looks like breadcrumbs, that is ground up cashews." Whoa, was I scared. I spent the whole lunch on the floor of the bathroom with a throwing up kid, feeling like the worst mother in the world. So now we have a protocol about allergies that we go through no matter how many times we've had a dish in this restaurant. We point to every dish as it arrives at our table and ask, can he have it? Many restaurants will actually do that for every dish without us even asking. Even for obvious dishes like, a pan full of shrimp, they'll say, not allergy safe. If a restaurant isn't confirming every dish as they bring it to you, ask them. The fifth mistake is mistranslating ingredient categories. Oh, did we get into trouble with this one? You see, it's easy to translate words like lobster and cashews. It's hard to translate words like nuts and shellfish, but I didn't know that. I am very lucky to have friends who speak many languages. So when we started going abroad, I easily found native speakers to translate my allergy cards. Then one day, we are in a restaurant in France, and the waitress tells me that a certain dessert should be just fine for my son because it has pistachios, not walnuts. When I told her that he's allergic to all nuts, she realized that we had a little oopsie in our allergy card. We thought that noix meant nuts and noix means walnuts. The right term, she told us, is fruits à coque. Turns out that we had the same problem with our Spanish allergy card. Not all languages have a common term for tree nuts. Unless you suffer from this allergy or work in the food industry, you might not know it, even if you're a native speaker. The two categories that are the worst are nuts and seafood. There are many ways to deal with this. This comes up in many online travel forums. We are not the first or the last people to make this mistake. Good way to figure this out is to Google for not allergy French or not allergy Japanese and read the travel forums so that you can learn the technical jargon for allergies in that country. Another option that I think is even safer is to call out each ingredient separately and avoid categories altogether. The moral of this story is that you want to have several levels of defense. Communicate your allergies as clearly as you can. Double check each dish as it arrives at your table. Have allergy medicines on hand at all time and have fun. Eating out is meant to be enjoyable, not scary. For more thought-provoking culinary topics, don't forget to subscribe to Helen's Kitchen channel. And if you are ever in the Boston area, maybe I'll see you in one of my classes.